Our safer space principles.
Number 1, respect the physical, mental, and emotional boundaries of the other participants. Number 2, let's not assume the identity, sexuality, gender, health, or background of others. Number 3, respect the opinions, beliefs, and experience of others. Number 4, let's be aware of our own prejudices, privileges, behavior, and the space we occupy. Number 5, no harassment or discrimination whatsoever. No homophobia, transphobia, racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, fatphobia, etc. Let's strive to act with positive intent and take care of each other. So we are lucky enough to have today with us two people who have had extensive experience working with learners in lots of different contexts. Rita Bouchard works in a hybrid school on the West Coast, which is a combination of learners learning in school and learning at home as well. And Carl Rust works in a conventional public school in Elkhart, Indiana, doing his best to implement principles of SDE amidst the constraints of curriculum. What we'd like to do actually is to give you a quick poll to have you enter your preferences about which the many questions we've received we should focus on during this call. We'll try to cover as much as we can, but please take a few minutes to maybe choose 3 out of each of the 3 questions. There's about 18 different topics or questions that have been submitted. So maybe it'll take about 5 minutes for you folks to put your answers in there. Can everyone see the poll? Anybody who can't see the poll? Great.
Participative poll.
Okay. We seem to have a lot of info to work with here. So Carl and Rita, over to you.
Thanks everybody for coming today. Hopefully we will help you out. One thing we want to make sure that we mention, we've had experiences and ideas and we've tried different things, but we can talk about all the different things that we've done and tried, but really your situation is going to be unique to you. So you may hear something in here that sounds really great and you want to try it, you go back to your situation, it doesn't work so well. So we can give you an example, we can give you examples and we can give you ideas, but you really have to take it and adapt it to whatever you're doing. So with that being said, where do you want to start, Rita? Let's see.
Well, it looks like question number 3 and question 13, those are beefy questions, and I think they could take up a significant amount of time. So would you like to begin with number 3?
Sure.
All right. So self-directed education being implemented within the conventional school system. All right. Thank you for all your questions, by the way. I found them enticing, interesting, relevant, and super important, which is why you're here. So in implementing conventional school system self-directed education, 2 things that Carl and I were speaking of this morning are, first of all, happy kids, a happy community, and teacher authenticity, and the desire to want to do self-directed education. So which one do you want to choose right now, Carl? Because we can ping pong back and forth.
Yeah. Well, I think when so much of it depends on your particular situation. I mean, I'm in a school where I'm the only one that believes that this is a good idea. And I took over a class as a long-term substitute that they've had trouble getting a teacher to stay in this room. So they really need me. So that's why I'm able to get away with some of the things that I'm doing, but I don't really have allies. So if you're fortunate enough to be in a building, and I think Rita maybe has some allies, if you're fortunate enough to be in a building where the administrator, you have a sympathetic administrator, or you have a team of teachers, that can be very beneficial to get, especially get you started. But it's a challenge to do this in the middle of a conventional school. And it's not easy to do. I just came in and said, this is what I believe is right. And I brought it to the community of kids that I'm working with. And even though they're very conditioned to believe, they think they know what school is, they think they know what learning should look like, and they don't really yet, most of them don't quite get what it is I'm doing. But I've opened it up and given them a lot of freedom to choose what they want to work on during the day. So I guess the first thing is, you just have to kind of figure out your own situation. Do I have allies? Do I have people I can talk to? Are there sympathetic people in the building or in the system that can help me? If you're on your own, then you kind of have to look at your classroom, your group that you're working with, and think, okay, what's something that we could do to kind of open this up a little bit? And we can give you some suggestions, but I think the first step is for you to just really reflect on what is it that's really going well in this class, this whatever you're doing, and what are some things that I might try? And then the main thing too is I try to be honest and transparent with I call them my co-learners, my younger co-learners. And so I'll just go to them and say, I don't really like grades very much, but we have to do grades. So what are we going to do? What do you guys think we should do? And be prepared for them not really to have a lot of ideas in the beginning, because they're conditioned to think of school as being the regular old, you come in, you get an assignment, you do it, or you don't do it. You get a grade, you take a test. That's what they think school is all about. So it takes them a while to have opinions. So I think the first step is just think about, what do you really believe about learning? What do you really believe is the best environment to foster that learning? Whatever you perceive learning to be, and how does it happen? And just be open and transparent with your group and say, this is what I'm trying to do. There's no reason to keep it a secret. You just say, I want to have some real authentic learning. I want to give you some choices. What do you think? What would you like to do? And see what they have to say. And then the other thing that's really important to me is, sometimes in conventional school, we think the curriculum is science, social studies, math, reading, and we think we've got this body of knowledge that we're delivering to people. But actually, there's a more important curriculum that happens in every school everywhere, happens in every group everywhere, and that's, how do we get along with each other? How do we communicate? How do we respect each other or not respect each other? And that overshadows this other stuff. And we get so caught up in I've got to teach about the Revolutionary War, or whatever it is my subject is, that I'm missing lots of opportunities to just interact with people. But it happens in every classroom. And whether kids actually learn the official curriculum or not, they're learning every day what it is to get along with other people. How do we work together or not work together? So if I'm really like running an authoritarian classroom where you cannot talk, you cannot get out of your seat, you can't barely breathe, that's what I'm teaching to the kids, that's the way life is. Mm-hmm. And so one thing I would hope people realize is, there's a lot more to the curriculum, and there's a lot more potential to the curriculum than whatever the subject is. Mm-hmm. To me, the subject is almost irrelevant. The main thing is, how do we communicate? How do we get along? How do we work on things together and move along the learning line? Take over, Rita. I said too much already.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you said, and there were a few points that resonated with me. The first one was voice. So I appreciate that you talked about how you ask the students what they are interested in and what you're transparent. You're not being the dictator of what happens in the class. You're giving them voice. So I want to talk a little bit about how important voice is in the classroom climate. The classroom climate is going to create your platform for how learning unfolds and how comfortable kids are taking risks, which we want them to. And that also involves that we share power with them. And that term power is scary to some teachers because they think that if I share power with my students, they're going to run all over me. And so that brings up the idea of what are you comfortable with in your classroom in terms of noise levels? What do you perceive is happening with the students when they're learning? Is it chaos or is it just noisy? So we have to really stand back and think about what does this climate look like, sound like, and feel like to be a learner in this space? How do my kids feel in this space? And going back to what Carl is saying about voice, it's asking them, how does it feel to learn this way? What is one thing that you would like to change? So class climate is in regards to SDE being implemented within the conventional school system, you want to start with your classroom climate. It has to be a room where kids feel free to move around. They feel free to get up and use the restroom when they need to. And you might think that this isn't relevant to SDE, but it really is. When kids feel free to learn in a space, they can get their needs met. They are looking at themselves as part of the room, not objects in a room. So they are learning with each other. They are learning with you. They are learning from you and from each other, but they're also ready to take the next step to say, hey, that teacher trusts me. I'm going to do something. I'm going to try this on and see how I do. So you really do want to begin with the class climate. Going from there, I suggest trying inquiry-based learning. And you may start with structure for some who need it. You may start with guided inquiry for some who are ready to say, hey, I can do this. I just need a little bit of guidance. And then you may have already self-directed learners in your space where you practice free inquiry. So it's 3 different types of inquiry for students. And some are doing their own topics. Some are doing a main topic you've chosen with some guidance, and some need structure. So it's okay to have different levels of learning within your space. You don't need to manage every student in your classroom, and you're letting out the line a little bit at a time for those who need structure to give them some autonomy a little bit at a time. I hope that's helpful. What are your thoughts, Carl?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Classroom climate is a very good place to start. And then you might start thinking about some of the other elements. So you have, depends on how conventional your background is or what you currently are practicing. Some people are already doing maybe some project-based learning, or they're doing some inquiry. But even if you've been pretty traditional, well, I shouldn't say pretty conventional in the past, so you have assignments, you have grades, all that kind of stuff. So you can start looking at all these different elements and think, okay, first of all, one of the things I think is really important is self-directed is consent. So, yeah, you know, any form of pedagogy or instructional framework will work fine if you have the consent of the learner. You can run a very traditional or very conventional class if that's what the learners want. my experience is when given a choice, that's not what they want. But maybe in some cases they do. I mean, if you're going to learn to drive a car, then you're probably going to have fairly conventional instruction. You're going to, try it out, that kind of thing. But so look at all your different things. So do you really need to do all the tests that you're doing? Do you really need to grade all the papers that you're grading? Can you maybe grade some papers and not grade others? That's a step towards not being graded at all. So you can take little baby steps. If you have a project that you think is really wonderful and that you present it to kids, do they have an option A, B, C? So A, you do it, and this kind of goes along with what Rita's saying about the guided inquiry. Do you want to do a project where the teacher has listed all the things and you do them in order? Or do you want to have something a little bit more loose? Or option C can be, you come up with an idea. And that way, kids that are coming from a more conventional background may need a little support. They may not really be ready to just dive in the deep end of the pool. They may want to have some structure. One of the things I did in this classroom of sixth graders, and so I'm seeing 74 kids a day for about an hour, and I have a homeroom that I see a little bit longer than that. But I put the following structure in place. So we always start with journaling, but there's no penalty if you don't journal. It's not like I'm walking around with the clipboard and saying, oh, Johnny, you didn't journal today, you have detention. But that's an opportunity. And I also expressed to them that communication isn't just writing. And that's one of the downfalls we have in school is we tend to categorize things in little boxes. And so we say, okay, we're going to teach writing. What I'd rather do is look at communication. And so if I see two girls sitting in their desk talking to each other, that counts as a journal. They're communicating. So we have journal time, we have student presentation time, which they sign up for, and they can present about anything they want to. I had a girl Friday that got up and did a karaoke song and dance from something on YouTube. And it was really great. I mean, she did a great job, but there's nothing I would ever have thought to assign anybody. Can you imagine assigning a class? Everybody's going to get up and sing a song and dance, and that wouldn't work at all. But it was her idea. So they have student presentations, which can be about anything. I've had kids get up and just talk about their personal history, their friends, their family. I've had people talk about Ukraine. I've had people talk about sports, all kinds of things. And then I have a section that I call the teacher presentation. And that's where I'm paying a little bit of lip service to the curriculum. So I see on the sixth grade standards, there's a certain topic that they're supposed to have knowledge of. So I present it for usually only about 5 or 10 minutes, maybe at the most. There's no assignment. There's no test. I don't require them to do anything. The only thing I point out to them is anytime anybody talks about something in here, you can reflect on it, or you can make a project out of it yourself. And then we have work time. And work time means basically you can do whatever you want to. So I have a lot of kids that sit and talk. And I have some kids that work on the next presentation they want to do. And I have some kids that are doing, and I've also introduced a few other possibilities. So we have a school newspaper they can work on. We have community service where they go around the school to other classrooms and help out. We have a new thing, which we call the money game, where they're picking jobs. They're getting a paycheck. They have to pay bills. It's just kind of a simulation of what it is to be be an adult in a way. And some kids have chosen not to do that at all. And there's no penalty. And so one of the things I think is really important to think about when you think about SDE is, to me, it's not truly SDE if a kid can't say, no, thank you. If they can't say no, thank you, then it's coercive. Okay. And so those are some things that I've done that have kind of opened things up. I mean, there's lots of ways you can open up your classroom. And in my book, I identified 9 practices or habits that schools have that may not really be, that in my opinion, aren't really effective anymore. like age segregation,
Right.
grades and testing. And at the end of each chapter, I give a few suggestions of things that you might try in your situation. So
Yeah.
you imagine, I
So,
guess
go ahead.
the sky is the limit on what you can do. It just depends on your situation and what you are comfortable with and what your kids are comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to bring that thought around, talking about kids getting up spontaneously and, doing something that you haven't planned, that's one of those nuggets that you're putting into an emotional bank account that kids are like, yay, this was fun. Okay. So there's going to be more buy-in when kids have those kinds of memorable moments, are memorable moments, even though they're not planned. And that all adds to the classroom climate development. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but not having grades, which is something we don't do at my school. We have narratives, so we make observations and give feedback, and we don't have punishments and we don't have rewards. So those are two other elements that I can talk with people later about. And teachers can choose to do that in their own space. Nobody's telling you you have to punish kids. Nobody's telling you you have to reward them. I've never heard of a school that said you had to do those things. It's a choice because it's our mental model of how education works in the classroom. But right now what we want to do is open this up to anybody who wants to unmute and ask a question or have a comment.
The one thing I can comment on is I am required to give grades. So my thinking on this has actually changed over the time I've been with these guys. And I inherited some grades. There were some people that had been in the classroom already put grades in the grade book. I am required to enter scores. So my first thought was, well, I'm just going to let them do their thing and I'll put a grade in. And then after thinking about it some more and working on it, I give them a weekly reflection sheet where they think about what they did this week and they put down what grade they think they should get. So it's kind of, I'm trying to make it more collaborative with the kid, but I can show you an example of what I do when I'm just observing kids during the week. So I'm just writing down little initials or little short words that mean something to me that maybe wouldn't mean anything to you. But these are things, so C's, usually I'm seeing them communicating. L's, they're listening. This has to do with our money system. They got a check. This kid actually got 2 checks and paid his bills. So I'm just kind of making an observation. And somebody had asked, there was one of the questions in here is about accountability. And I think you have to really stop and think about what you mean when you say that word accountability. Everybody's accountable to themselves for how they spend their time. If you break a law, then there's probably going to be a consequence for that. But if you're just pursuing your own course and you're not bothering anybody else, what gives me the right, just because I'm older and have college degrees, to pass judgment on what you're spending your time doing? I may ask you or have a conversation with you about that, or you may have a conversation with me about that. But I don't think accountability, everyone should be accountable to themselves. I see Thomas has his hand up.
And Samira has a question as well.
Okay.
I'm a computer programmer, so I look closer at the raw data, Carl. So thanks for putting that up there. I saw you use the code AB on a couple of entries.
They were absent.
Okay. And just to let everybody know, Samira and I are in the same house here, so we're happily married.
So this is great. Thank you, Samira, for your question. Schools are assessed by how they perform on those feudal standard tests, and teachers might be panelists. So I am fortunate that I am at a public charter school hybrid where we get our charter within the district, and we have not, we are not ranked, and neither are the other schools in our district. LAUSD though does rank. But how do you maintain SDE under this restriction? I think that Carl was talking about this earlier. SDE actually is a letting go of that fear, because that's all about fear. You know, I'm going to rank your school, so I'm going to scare you into teaching the test so you perform well, etc. If you can let go of that, your school climate will change, the teachers will change, the students will change, and the self-directed education with the climate, classroom climate, those all work together. So if you can take that test and not, you know, give it the status that we give it as educators. I'm not speaking about myself because we don't teach to the test. We just do the test at the end of the year to meet that requirement. If you can let go of that and focus on your environment, you know, you have, that's where you have a circle, it's your circle of influence. If you can focus on that and make that a good climate for kids and yourself, you don't forget about yourself as a teacher, things are just going to fall into place, and it does take time. But the best thing teachers can do is not let that state testing be that cloud for the whole 9 months of the school year, 10 months of the school year, that is dictating what is happening, because it is a power structure that's entering your classroom and it's controlling everything. So I'm not going to go into power structures, but that's what that is. It's controlling every element of the, you know, pedagogy, your organization, your system spheres. And if you can let that go and just do what's good for kids, things will change. So I think that's an excellent question. It's a fear question.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research out there about standardized testing. And one thing that they found is that unstressed, happy people do better on tests.
Mm-hmm.
So it's counterintuitive to a teacher, because a lot of teachers are people that they're detail oriented, they're planners, they're organizers. And so they want to figure out, okay, how am I going to help kids get a high score on this test? And what they're doing is actually counterproductive. So, but it's hard for people to see that, because they think of, I'm going to have an effect on my group. I want to help them. So they have well-meaning. They do things that actually might cause their test scores to go down, because if you stress kids out, if they're unhappy, and actually the other thing is, if they have good nutrition, they have a positive attitude, they don't worry about the test, there can be some positive results. So there are some schools out there. There's a school in Ann Arbor, Michigan called Ann Arbor Open, which is a public school that has to do all the Michigan testing that everybody else does. And they have multi-age classrooms. They have open movement in the hallways and the classrooms. Kids are allowed to move, go to the restroom, do things like that. They have a negotiated curriculum with kids. I mean, it's not quite self-directed, but it's a little freer. And their test scores are great. And actually, even when you adjust for demographics, because Ann Arbor is a university town, they tend to have a little bit more affluent people, although obviously everybody in Ann Arbor isn't affluent. But even when you adjust for those factors, their test scores are above schools that are in the same cohort. When I did a self-directed program in public school for 2 years as an alternative program, and our kids on NWA testing, a vast majority of them improved in reading and math. We had no conventional classes at all. They improved in reading and math and language, and beat the average. So to me, it's not only being happy, but there's another element to it, because there's also a misconception that if I drill arithmetic into a kid's head, that they're going to do well on a mathematics exam. Where actually, if I'm doing a lot of things I'm interested in, my theory is, and I don't know if I have a way to prove this, that there's like in your brain, there's almost like a math muscle, and it's getting exercised. Even if you're not doing math problems, which is our conventional thing is, let's do some math problems. Maybe you're not doing that, but like my kids now are depositing checks in the bank, they're paying bills, they're thinking mathematically. And with the other program that I ran, they did a lot of Minecraft, they did a lot of YouTube videos, they did a lot of skateboarding, skating, running, jumping, tag. Did nothing conventional really. So that somehow that math muscle was getting exercised, somehow that language muscle. One of the things about language is one of the best ways I think to exercise that language muscle is to have a conversation. And that's one thing in conventional schools that we forbid a lot of the day. Don't talk to your neighbor, and think about collaboration skills. So what is the natural response if I'm stuck on a problem? I might want to talk to my friend about it. Well, in a lot of conventional classrooms, stop talking. You're cheating. It's the only place in the world that's called cheating, by the way. When you get out into industry and business, that's collaboration. It's no longer cheating. It's only in school that talking to someone about something you're stuck on is cheating. So I think the standardized curriculum, standardized testing thing, if we, like Rita said, if we could just kind of let go of that, even if we have to do it, kind of let go of it and see what happens. You might actually, our test scores might actually go up.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's definitely true. The research shows that test scores do go up when you let go, because kids see it as a novelty. And Paula, you have your hand up. What question do you have?
Yeah, I was wondering if I could get to know a little bit more of Derek Hannem's experience, because I really find all your experiences really interesting. And he left a little comment saying, great comments from both speakers. Thank you, Carla and Rita. But he was commenting more on his own experience. Maybe we could have like conversations or breakout rooms to get to know more about their own little contribution.
Paula, are you meaning breakout rooms with each of us in a room so we could talk about our experiences at our own places of practice?
Yeah, I mean, so that we can all share a little bit of what we were involved with and maybe raise some more doubts for you guys. Because I can see here like Derek Hanem told us that he has been in an SD, in an environment of class democracy and respect for rights with students that are 11 to 12 years old.
Yes.
And that the way that this worked for him, and I would like to know more about this from him. I don't know if the other participants are up for that. Maybe some.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I've had a conversation with Jerry about the 20% idea. We call them passion projects, and we do them for 2 months a year and twice a year. And it's quite revealing, but it is directed, and it's around a topic that the students choose themselves. So that brings me to just really quickly, check question 7. A person was asking, how do we manage 100 students with 100 different pathways? And I can connect with you about what I do, because I have any one time between 30 and 60 students, but it is manageable. And it's just what I basically use is I document the students document, excuse me. it's a set of forms that they fill out what they're doing to keep track of what they're doing and how they're doing it. But I also use consults, which are very short meetings, which help students reflect on where they have been and what is next. And then I give them resources if they need any, or I ask them deeper questions to further their learning. But I like Paula's idea of having those breakout rooms. So just quickly to say a little bit about my experience is I teach a 4th and 5th grade combination classroom, and the children are between 8 and 11 because that's just where they fall in whenever their parents decide to have them in school. But we're non-coercive. We have no punishments, no rewards. They have narrative report cards. They use the restroom when they want to. They basically self-direct. If they need to go out on a break outside, they go. If they want to learn outside, they can learn outside. So it's a pretty free environment. The most important thing for them is that they have to be safe. You know, I just need I need to know where they are. I need to know if they're alone, where they are, things like that. But it's not, I don't overmanage them. I don't manage them very much at all. But it's those little pieces that give them a sense of autonomy and trust that actually furthers them to work more intentionally and feel that they are accountable and responsible for their own learning. Because with that autonomy, or with that autonomy comes responsibility. And it works very well. All right, rooms are ready.
So do you think it's a good time now to move on to breakout rooms?
I think so.
Okay.
What do you think, Carl?
Sure.
How much time do you think? Maybe 15 minutes? Would that be okay?
That would be great. And then we
Yeah.
can come out and,
Yeah.
Great.
And there was a question from Alison that I don't know if maybe we could come back to that when we come back from the breakout room, because I think it's really interesting about the concept
Yeah.
of SD and conventional. So maybe we can check it later. Okay, so breakout rooms are open,
Yes.
and I will stay in the main room. So if there is any issue or whatever, just come back. And if you don't feel like joining any breakout room, you can also like stay in the main room or
Yes.
get a coffee or something.
Let's discuss in smaller groups. 15 minutes.
That everyone is back, so you know. And yeah, I think we are all back. So
Paula, sorry, I tried to find you, but I couldn't find my way through the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Derry.
Creative Maverick.
We probably should have titled the breakout rooms with people that wanted to get talked to. Maybe that would have worked.
We all need a talking to.
We had a great talk in our room with Alyssa
too.
talking about what her situation was. Also, Kathy Ann joined us a little bit late, but she's very experienced in self-directed education.
Derry has his hand up.
Yeah, just a quickie. I've got to go, Carl. I'm really sorry, but thanks to you and Rita very much. I agree with everything you said. I'm sorry about plugging the book, but
No, go. Let's go for
you
it.
can't resist it. You know what it's like. Everybody who writes one of the damn things has to push it. It's a compulsive thing. I just wanted to say before I go that it's very hard, in my experience, in public schools to introduce SDE across the whole school in one go. In my put your foot in the door and make a start somewhere. And that's really the whole point of the 20% idea, to begin to create a space where self-directed learning is possible. And then Rita's 3 approaches the kind of semi-prescribed project-based learning moving right through to the sort of full SDE, depending on what the kids can handle. I really like that, but you have to start somewhere. And what I find with the 20% idea, people have got to be very greedy and very confident to say that 80% isn't enough for them. In my experience, especially talking to media people, I've got a TV producer now who's really interested in the 20% idea, mainstream TV too, a public service channel 4, who just says, well, it's so obvious, why doesn't everybody agree with you? I said, well, that's a good question, you should ask them. Anyway, 20% as a foot in the door is sort of my little two-penn'orth here. Lovely to be with you, and sorry I've got to leave. Bye.
It's good to see
Gary.
you. Awesome.
Oh, buy the book. Very cheap.
So yeah, I think we were gonna highlight, was it Ashley's question, Bruno, or Alyssa?
Allison.
Yeah, the one of
Allison,
using the term SD. I don't know if
Okay.
you would like to say, Alison, something about it.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I can talk about that, or
Yeah, go ahead.
Rita, go ahead. Okay, well, I think that everybody is self-directed learner. Because you're sitting in a conventional classroom, there are things going on in your mind that may or may not have anything to do with what's going on. May or may not have anything to do with the teacher's agenda. So you decide as an individual to what degree you're going to cooperate with the teacher agenda. And so when you go into a classroom and watch and observe, you see a whole range of reactions. You see some kids that are really in tune with what the teacher's doing, and they really like it, and they're doing everything that they are asked to do. And you have some kids that are doing it, but their motivation is they've been conditioned to think of grades as a reflection of their self-worth, and that the A is the ultimate goal. And so they're cooperating not because they really want to, but because they're motivated by this grade thing. And then you have some kids that are kind of in and out. They'll do some of it, they don't do all of it. They're kind of daydreamers, or what they've done in school now is they've given everybody a device, and then they tell them not to use it. So you have a lot more kids that are off task because they've gotten really good at putting the iPad in their lap or their desk, and they're doing their own thing. And then you have some kids, you have another subset of kids that don't do any of it, but they don't cause any trouble. They just kind of sit there and they are polite and they don't make noise and they just kind of get through the day. And then you have another subset of kids that are the rebels that are falling out of their chairs, screaming, running around, tipping desks over and getting kicked out. And they're obviously exercising their self-directed rights that I don't like what this is about, so I'm just going to cause problems until you kick me out of here. And then hopefully the principal will send me home so I can sit and do whatever I want to do. The problem is the kids don't know that they're self-directed, and parents don't know. They think that they have to do what the school is telling them to do, and you don't. And another group I'm in, Unschooling School, that's our whole premise. Schools are paid for by people, by parents who are working, and some people that don't even have kids. The school should be going to their customers and saying, what would you like us to provide for you? And instead of that, they've convinced people, and Ivan Illich talked about this in 1970 in his book, Deschooling Society, that when you professionalize the teaching profession, and then all of a sudden, all the responsibility for learning is on the teachers and the school, and you think that no learning ever happens anywhere else, then it's like, well, we better listen to them. They know what they're doing. We don't. I don't.
Yeah.
I have heard so many parents say, I don't know how to teach. I don't know what to do. I'm not a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a shame, because for centuries and centuries, the family was the learning unit. The village, the family, the tribe, the group was the learning. And all of a sudden, just because in the 1800s we invented this thing called school, now all of a sudden that's the only place you learn anything is at school. So my position is everyone's self-directed. Some kids don't know that.
Yeah.
And they think they have to do what the teacher says, but you really don't have to. And then if enough kids would stop and enough parents would stop, schools would have to change.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. And I think in regarding Allison's question about she's asking about the definition. So the definition I look at for self-directed, it's from selfdirected.org, is education is a sum of everything a person learns that supports them towards living a satisfying and meaningful life. So bouncing off what Carl is saying is all kids are self-directed. They're born learning, they're so curious, they're innately curious, and then they start school. I don't want to go into the politics of or that, you know, the theories of that, because I think that's a bigger conversation, but helping kids become or remain self-directed is up to the way we are as facilitators in school. And it's even more of a reason to try to do self-directed learning through PBL or through one of the levels of inquiry for your students. It's to help them, as Sue Haynes would support me in, have their agency back. You know, they know what to do when they don't know what to do. So that's what we found out with COVID. Kids went home, they got on screens, and they were looking for the teachers to tell them what to do. They didn't know what to do because they hadn't learned how to self-direct. So, and just another reason to explore that, beginning in any level that you can. And Sydney, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I hear what Allison is saying about the name self-directed education being confusing. Because I often think it's not self-directed if they don't give their consent, period. You know, but I think when you apply what Carl is saying to the situation, you're revealing that students either give their consent or not in their own mind. They're the ones who decide whether they're going to learn or not, or pay attention or not. So they still have control of their consent, but it's not overt. It's you know, it's not acknowledged agency by the environment. And I think what Carl's also saying is because the parents don't know that, and the kid and the teachers don't recognize it, then they don't think that it's a self-directed environment. But the fact of the matter is, every environment is self-directed. And when you're in prison,
I think,
you don't have any choice. You can't do much, but you're still self-directed because you're a human being.
It's almost as if it's when they're not doing what they're told, it's their form of protest. So it's a form of you know, telling you that they're not giving you your consent, their consent, and they're not going to do it. And Sydney, I agree with you that we have to recognize that and open that up to a conversation with them about, so what is interesting to you? And in that way, those students are spending their time doing something that's meaningful to them. When you ask them, so what is your plan? They're not sitting there like blobs all day. They're actually exploring something that's interesting to them. I think that's really important for teachers to recognize as well, is rather than have students not participating in anything, it's giving them that agency to decide, well, what would you like to do right now?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I like what Allison said. So there is a difference between the individual as a self-directed learner and the environment. No, the environment in conventional school is not self-directed. And in my little hour of time that I have with them, if they want to go to sleep, I have a problem with that. But that would not fly in other places in the building. So, let's see, there's something else I was going to say, and then it just flew right out of my mind. Oh, I know what it was. So I've got these 74 kids that I'm seeing daily if they're at school. And so when I look at their grades across the spectrum, first, one thing I decided to do about grades is I was not going to give anything lower than a C to anybody. I told them I would never give anybody an F because I'm never going to label somebody as a failure. Nobody's a failure. And D lasted for a day or two, and then I just decided I'm not going to do that either. But what I've seen is these kids that are getting Fs in everything, and there are kids in my group that are getting Fs in everything, and their percentages are so low. It's like, okay, they're just not participating. And what Rita said is they don't understand it, but that's their protest. They're saying, you're not giving me anything that I'm interested in doing. So, but when I throw out community service and I throw out the money game, there are kids that are choosing to do that aren't doing anything else. Apparently, I mean, I don't know. I don't really understand. I kind of know how teachers grade. So they could be doing a little bit here and there and they could still have an F, which is one of the disgraces about the system that people use for grades. That you can do a whole bunch of stuff a part of the time and still get an F because you didn't do everything the whole time. So I think that's really interesting to me. And I know from having conversations with some kids are outdoor kids, they're mechanical kids. When I ask them what they do at home, I work on my four-wheeler, I'm fixing it up, I'm driving tractors, it's like, these are things, this is what these kids are interested in. They don't want to be sitting in a classroom. They don't even want to do the things that I'm doing, although one of those guys is doing the money thing. He's one of the ones that's done everything he needed to do to get a certain income that he wanted to get. So my point is, there's so many barriers in conventional classrooms to being an individual and being yourself. And one of the things I'm trying to do is, and I have to remind myself of this all the time because it does get frustrating at times, the noise level, what I consider to be silly behavior. But I have to keep reminding myself, I'm holding a space for people to be themselves and to do what they are interested in doing. And I'm holding this space open. And that's what I've decided I'm going to do. And that means that kids may choose to do nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
And some kids may choose to do one thing. And I'm going to try to honor them no matter what. Everybody, I think, it's hard to say everybody does stuff, but they all love to communicate with each other.
Yes.
Well, I remember a book, Disrupting Class, and one of the points of that book was in industry and business, business's job is to figure out what the customer wants and then provide it to them. And so I can't remember if they did a survey or if it was just a thought experiment. So they were thinking about, what do kids want from school? What do kids really want from school? And they came to the conclusion the kids want to hang out with their friends and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want from school. And school, sometimes against its own will, does provide some of that. I get to hang out with my friends. Sometimes I get to have fun. But what if that's just was the purpose? A place for you to hang out with your friends and have fun. Anyway, okay, my tirade's over for now.
I appreciate that, Carl. And I think something to add to that, when you're talking about creating that space, and we have to ask ourselves, what is, because you talked about some things are silly and in your opinion, and we always have to ask ourselves, well, is it silly to them? What is it like right now to be those kids? So the way I perceive what's happening, is based on, you know, my past, my knowledge, my biases, whatever. But that's something to keep in check. And it's okay. And I think, I really believe it's okay to have that dialogue with kids about, you know, right now it's a little bit noisy for my brain.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
So what
do
I
that.
need to think, what I need is a little bit of, you know, library voice. Can we go to that a bit? And that's called authentic, right? I think teachers being authentic with kids is really important, and not, otherwise it's just, you know, you're lying to them about how you feel, and that builds resentment. But I know that there are some people in the audience who may have some things they would like to say or comments,
Sure.
and we have about 9 minutes left. Please feel free to unmute yourselves and, you know, and speak.
And I just have a quick comment about co-opting, and that's anything can be co-opted. And that's one reason I'm kind of against promoting systems, and I'm more interested in developing personal philosophy about what learning is and how it happens, and then how are you going to create that environment, instead of saying, I want you to do self-directed education. So I would rather see it come organically from a grassroots. You work with your co-learners and you develop whatever kind of program you want to develop, call it whatever you want to.
That's a good point. Why do we have to call it anything?
So yeah, I'm open to anybody's comments, questions. I'm trying to keep up with the chat, but
I started to go another way with the chat, but what came to mind for me in what you were saying, talking about the situation, about the silly things, that one thing that I found important in a number of settings is to include in the documentation time devoted to silly things. You can put it in whatever way the state inspectors need to see it, but to never say they're doing nothing. Because that's why they don't understand self-directed, is because they don't know they're directing themselves when they're not doing the project that was pre-planned by the adults, or the things that have the check boxes. That I think it's important for the kids to acknowledge that choosing to do a silly thing is choosing to do something, and that's great.
yeah, it's more just being old and cranky and grumpy some days, and I do try to own it. I do try to own that, and I tell them,
Yeah.
you know, I'm feeling grumpy right now, so.
I have
And
a
I do
big
use the
headache.
phrase of it's too noisy for me, and I think that's important to, and they may not even realize it at the time, but it's important to own your own feelings. And that's the only way that they're going to learn to own their own feelings, is if I model that, say, this is how I'm feeling. Were there any of the other questions that we didn't really answer? Oh, somebody asked about planning. And what I do is I just have those four elements of my hour, and I make a plan because the principal told me I had to have lesson plans. So I have a topic every day connected to a state standard, but there are days there's so many student presentations that we don't even have time for mine. Originally, I'd put me on top, and then I realized, wait a minute, if I'm on top and I take a long time, there may not be time for the students to do their thing. So I switched it. So students are journaling's first, then the students, then me. And there have been times when we use the whole hour up doing student presentations, and I just post it on Google Classroom, and I say what I was going to talk about is on Google Classroom if you want to go look at it. But that element is really for the administration. It's not, I mean, I think it's fine to throw out information to people and they may find something really interesting and decide to go with it. But that's all the planning I do. If I wasn't constrained by the principal, I probably wouldn't even do that much planning. I might, what we used to do in our program that we ran for the elementary kids in the alternative program was we had a morning meeting and sometimes we would show a video or two. If like it was like Veterans Day, we might show a video about what is Veterans Day, but it was just kind of like any kind of something that interested us. They got into a kick of Greek mythology where they wanted to watch all these little cartoons about Greek mythology, and okay, we'll do that for a while until they get tired of it, and then we'll do something
Carl?
else. Yeah.
Well, I just want to let everybody know, Carl and Rita, that we got another question that came in on the form. It reads, how can a teacher support a young person to decline something the school has on offer or requires?
Yeah, I did see that question, and I do that all the time. So it's not what we offer students, it's what they will take. And not all students will take what you offer. And so when they don't take it, it's actually, okay, so I'm going to give this back to you. What is your plan? What is it you're going to do today?
I'm reading that question a little different. It's not the,
Okay.
in the time that the young people are with other involvement in the school outside of your area, how do you help them with their struggles in the other coercive area?
Oh, so our whole school is pretty much got the same tenet. If a student is not wanting to learn, then what is your plan? What would you like to do? And sometimes kids, like I'm looking at Derry Hannum's pondering time. We do have kids that ponder and read, and then they ponder and they ponder some more. And
I think I understand this because this happens to me a lot. So in my room, kids can wear their hoods. But what I tell them is, this is like you're in a country and when you walk out the door, you're in another country. So there are different rules. They may say something to you about your hood where I never will. But you just have to be aware of what your surroundings are. What are the requirements of the place that you're in? I mean, and this is part of being a human being. So if I walk into the library, you mentioned library voices. If I walk into the library, there's an expectation that I'm not going to be screaming and yelling. If I'm on the basketball court, it's probably okay. Outdoors, scream and yell all you want to. And that's part of becoming an adult, is you realize I have to look around at my surroundings and decide what's acceptable in this space. The other thing I try to teach them, and it doesn't always come across, is in most of our governments, maybe not all the people here, we have the right to petition the government for change. And so one of the activities I do when I'm just in a classroom for a day or two is I say, what was something you would change about your school? And now let's write a letter to whoever has the power and see if they'll change that. You may get a no as an answer, but you always have the right to ask. I'm trying to plant a seed in their brain that says, oh, maybe I can change this. Not real optimistic in some cases that they really will, but you know what? We've seen kids get together, like the gun rights kids get together and make changes. So it's not impossible. You can always ask. So if the hood has to be off when you're in the hallway and you don't like that, then let's think of how are we going to get that changed? Who do we need to talk to?
yeah,
Ashley has her hand up,
yeah,
and Thomas too.
Yeah, I had just a quick question as to how you would respond about the hoods with administration, because we have a strict no hats, no hood policy. And in my room and the other middle school teacher, we're very much of the same mentality as you were saying. We talk about time and place, and in certain settings, it's not okay to certain people. But there's been times administration has come in our room and very blatantly said something to us about how it's not okay and we're not following a general school-wide expectation. And so I'm curious as to what you would say to that as administrator and how you would direct us as middle school teachers.
So Ashley, we had that before COVID. our school, as you know, as lenient as it is, that was one thing that our administrators were strict on. And so they could not give me a answer aside from, well, we got to be able to see your face. And so I didn't buy that. I don't think that is a good reason. So I never had my students take off their hats. So I can wear a beanie and they can't. So it was, I never could get a good answer. So I never told my kids they couldn't do that. And then one day I asked the kids, said, you know, they keep telling me that. And I said, so why have a dialogue around that? Why is it that I can't wear my hood? What does it bother you? And so after the murder of George Floyd was when they decided that they had to, because they were actually focusing on certain kids. They decided that, oh, we've been doing this wrong. This isn't okay. But it took that for them to actually reflect and say, why are we doing this? It's our rule. I'm uncomfortable with it. Nobody else is. So it took that to have that change. We still don't to this day have them where, so that rule is gone, is what I want to say.
Sorry, I hate being the annoying person coming with the clock, but we initially agreed on having 90 minutes, and I think it would be nice and respectful for everyone that maybe we stick to that, unless we would like to all continue for a little bit. And in that case, I don't know if we would like to stay maybe for 10 more minutes or something like that, as there are more conversations going on. I don't know how people feel about it. And if someone needs to go, it's understandable, as we said that. So it's up to the people present here. I don't know how you feel about it.
I'm okay to stay a while.
I could stay 10 more minutes. If anybody wants any specifics about any questions that they have, they can reach out to me as well. I'm happy to talk with them about systems for self-directed education or self-directed learning, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the link to Unschooling School in the chat, because my contact, there's a page, and Sydney's on there too. There's a page where you can contact us, although it doesn't want to pop up for some reason. But I'm totally open to individual conversations or emails or whatever. Yeah, I'll put my email address in here since it doesn't look like it's going to work right now. I'll have to get a hold of Heather and ask her why the website's not working.
Bruno put the link in the chat higher up.
Okay.
And we'll send a link, message with all the links.
I'm just
to
saying
the
the website's
participants.
not popping up right now. So
Yeah, it's not working.
Okay.
I don't know why.
So yes, the things in the chat are really interesting too. And daydreaming is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Everybody should be allowed to daydream.
Being bored is a great thing to do.
Yeah, a kid came to me on the playground and he said, I'm bored out of my mind. And he said, you know, when you're bored, that's when some of the best ideas come. And he said, oh, I didn't think of that.
I'm wondering if Derry can say a little bit more about the pondering time in the south of England. What more could you say
Is
about
he
that,
back?
Derry?
He said he was leaving.
Oh, it looks like he's here.
Oh,
No, I came back.
Didn't say what-
My meeting was delayed, and you're such a nice bunch of people. I couldn't stay away. At pondering time, yeah, it's a bunch of teachers. Oh my goodness, the English system, public school education in England, or state school education, used to be organised by local government areas called counties or cities. An awful lot of public schools have now been privatised, they've been handed over to private companies. They're still free for parents, but the schools are actually owned and managed by private companies, some of whom are rich business people who are friends of members of the government. It's quite disgraceful in what's supposed to be called a democracy. But there are one or two parts of the country where the local governments have managed to hang on to their schools. And in one of these areas in the south of England, in the county of Hampshire, a bunch of teachers have got together. It emerged out of teachers of religious education. And this is significant because the state controls every last word of the national curriculum except for religion. And religious education is still controlled by the local counties, who create a thing called a sacre, which consists of representatives from the various religious denominations in that area. So religious education is the one area of the curriculum that's not controlled centrally by the state. And in this part of England, a bunch of teachers of religious education who don't like the way the state system is going. Unfortunately, the local government, it's a very conservative county. It's one of the richest and most conservative counties in the country. So it's very difficult for the government to shut it down, which gives these teachers a degree of autonomy. Anyway, they've come together and decided they want to create a space in the curriculum of the secondary schools in their county, which would be very much in the hands of the kids. It is effectively self-directed education. And I've been talking to the county council officer in charge of this part of the curriculum, and she's completely convinced on the 20% idea that the kids need to be given a significant chunk of curriculum time that is their own, to follow their own purposes, etc. Well, these religious education teachers are sold on this idea and have started opening up their religious education space in the curriculum for the kids to decide what they want to do. And of course, religious education, ethics education includes citizenship, sustainability. So this part of the curriculum gives the kids the freedom to more or less choose anything they like. There are almost no limits on it. And this is exactly what I tried to do when I was working in schools. I'm working quite closely with the administrator who's responsible for this program. And some of the teachers are discovering that the kids have ideas, for God's sake. The kids want to learn things if only somebody would listen to them. And some of the teachers are becoming very excited, one in particular. And we're trying to get a university to provide 1 or 2 PhD students or postdoctoral students to actually write up and build a proper research project over what's happening in these schools. I'm talking too much, Rita, I'm sorry. It's the danger of letting me get started. But it is very exciting, and it's one of a number of growth points that exist in the UK.
Derry, I might have a graduate student or a postdoc at University of Bath that could do that research.
Well, that's a really go-ahead place, and there are 1 or 2 academics there who are seriously interested in these ideas. So that might be worth following up with an email, Rita.
Okay.
I'm such a slow typer. I put one Erasmus project into the chat. Erasmus is a source of funding in the European Union that funds research and curriculum development, etc., and exchanges of students between countries. But they've agreed to fund one very exciting project, which is bringing democratic schools together with public schools. And the democratic schools, there's one in Bulgaria, in Italy, in Belgium, and in Spain. Not Spain, Estonia. And they're working with public schools. And the whole point of the project is to see what the pedagogy and the approach to curriculum of the democratic schools, how this can be translated into better experiences in the public schools. It's a very exciting project, the first one of its kind anywhere in the world that I know of, and it has actually got funding. And there's another one coming out of Ireland. That one's emerged from Belgium. But there's another one called Needs, which is coming out of Ireland, which is 8 countries. It hasn't got funding yet. It's bidding for funding for a 3-year project. And again, that will have at the heart of it what they call negotiated integrated curriculum, where the kids come up with their concerns and the different specialists and bits of expertise that exist in the school are focused in on the kids' questions. I hope that one will get funding too. We don't know yet.
So, Derry, does that internal project of the Erasmus program have a name?
They have acronyms. And so the one that's got funding, that is for the elementary school level, linking the democratic schools with the public schools, that one is called DESC. Bit of a joke, really, because that's the one thing you don't need in an SDE classroom. But it's called DESC. It's DESC, Democratic Education Schools Project. And the other one is called NEEDS, NEEDS. And I can't for the life of me, the last 2 letters stand for Democratic Schools, but I can't remember what the other 3 are. I'll look it up, Sydney, and contact you.
On that note, we're going to send us all off scurrying to our search engines to find out what these projects are about.
Alyssa had a question in the chat about documenting student learning, which we talked a little bit about.
Yeah, I do a lot of documenting student learning because parents want to see what their children are doing, and we focus on communication as a skill, reading, speaking, dialoguing, but we make it transparent. Harvard Project Zero has a way to document learning and make it visible. That's mostly from students documenting their own learning. And I have ways of documenting. So if people ask, what is going on, and it's also for students to learn how to self-direct, but also keep track of their research, take notes. And those are all things we want, at least I want kids to know how to do when they get into high school and things like that, or even for their own, jobs, for what they do for their work. So I do have ways to do that. And if you want to send me an email, I can share those with you.
Yeah, and I showed you the one page that I use for each group. That's a week's worth of stuff where I write down what I notice them doing. And then I also have them fill out this, where is it? I have them fill out a little form on Fridays where they so it says, what are some things you've done this week in social studies? Communicated respectfully with others, completed a project, wrote journals, gave a presentation, worked on the newspaper, performed community service, did research, watched videos, listened respectfully to presentations. I tried to think of everything that they could possibly do. And then I said, list anything you did that is not on the list above. So they get a chance to tell me, and then tell what grade do you think you're in this week and give 3 reasons. And then that's a chance for them to document themselves. The journaling hasn't really caught on to that extent, but that is another possibility that somebody would really, and a few of them really do take that really seriously. That's another way.
Carl, do you have any video documentation going on with your kids?
I haven't done any videoing myself.
No, I mean them making their own videos about what they accomplish.
Well, they video each other while they're doing presentations, so I guess that they have done that.
And that's great because their perspective is different from ours.
They have the tools.
Yeah, what kids capture about themselves is different what teachers will capture. But something just that we haven't touched on is students giving teachers or facilitators feedback. and teachers and students being willing and open to be vulnerable. And so I put in the chat, so it's very simple. It's a form. It says Rita should keep doing, Rita should stop doing, Rita should start doing, and it's anonymous. If they want to put their name on it, they can, but I do that 3 times a year, and I act on it because students will tell you things that you don't realize that they don't like. And it's a way for you to reflect and take action. So I think it's important for us to, get that feedback for ourselves. Peer feedback is important, but we need it from the kids. They are the clients, if you will.
Yeah, I do that too.
Oh, high tech high.
I did
Yes.
the end of January. I did it again just recently, and I'll do it again at the end of the year. What do I do? What should I keep doing? What do I need to improve? And then some other questions, just kind of to get their input on things. And I do the rate your school year on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And I did that when I started, and they feel a little better now than they did back in January. So I think that's interesting information. I think their median response in January was they rated their year as a 5 or 6. I can't remember which one it was.
Nice.
And then the latest one was, 5.7 mean, and the latest one was a 6.7 mean. So they've gone up 1 point in how they feel about their entire school year. We'll see what happens at the end of the year. I've always surveyed kids from the beginning. When I started doing the program, the alternative program, I surveyed them about their former school experience, and then once they were in the program, I surveyed them about the program. I think that's really important that you get feedback from kids on how things are going and what they would like to see changed or improved. Or one thing we did this year, this wasn't our decision, this was a citywide, they flip-flopped the middle school and the elementary schedule. So now the elementary kids we start our day at 7:30 in the morning. And one comment I saw a lot is we start too early. And I agree with them. I think that's too early. But again, it's one of those one-size-fits-all decision. All elementary schools are going to start at this time. All middle schools are going to start at this time. No matter if it meets anybody's needs or not, just the way we're going to do it because of transportation.
I think Paula has a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Sydney. Actually, I was gonna say goodbye because I have another meeting I have to attend, but I wanted to say thank you so much, guys, because I really liked what I could reflect about here today. And I really liked some of the phrases that you brought up, such as this last one that you said about the feedback. Yeah, ask for feedback to the kids and they will tell you what you need to change, and then really apply it. I'm gonna take that one for me. And also the money experiment, Carl, I just found really good idea because they need to experiment with the adult world and they don't have this space most times. So I think this is something I definitely want to try one day. And thank you so much, Rita, for your reflections. I'm gonna take these bits and pieces and adapt them to my mindset, see how that works. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Paula.
Or should we do something?